Welcome to another episode of the Five Senses webcast. I'm your host, Robert Zinni, and today my guest is Adam England. He is a contributor to the Five Senses magazine with the Backyard Astronomer. He's here to talk about his passion for outer space, what a dark sky community is, and some fun activities with science and astronomy here locally in Prescott, as well as an update for the long-awaited Prescott Valley Performing Arts Theater that's opening up pretty soon. Adam, thanks for being our guest. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me here, Robert.
You have been a contributor for Five Senses for a while about the Backyard Astronomer. And I just want to know, where did that passion come from to explore outer space and the universe?
Well, I grew up here in the Prescott area between Prescott and Prescott Valley. And I remember as a kid, I would sleep on the trampoline all the time during the nice nights, which we have here, 3/4 of the year. And I would watch the satellites fly over. I would watch the space station go over. I grew up during the time of the space shuttles, so I would always go see the space shuttles. And one of my fondest memories is I was at elementary school in Prescott Valley, and our school got chosen to actually communicate with the astronauts on the space station. And so they built a giant ham radio antenna on the side of our school, and I was not picked, but my best friend was, and we were able to talk to the astronauts and ask them questions, and they responded to us in real time. And so it was things like that that really got me into astronomy, watching meteor showers. And then I was able to one night look through a basic telescope, a small run-of-the-mill Walmart telescope, and see the rings of Saturn. And at that point, I was hooked. When you realize that the Earth would fit between the planet of Saturn and the rings in this little black void, and the whole Earth would fit there, it really puts everything in perspective. And that's when it hooked me.
Okay. So not only do you get to see the visuals that hooked you talking to astronauts, but then it's kind of like those contemplations of life that the universe just grabs us there that you like. So if somebody's opening the Five Senses magazine and they see your article, what type of topics do you usually write about?
Well, we try to talk about something that is, one, visible in that time of year. So as we orbit the sun, of course, we're going to see different parts of the sky. And so we try to highlight on either a constellation or a nebula or something that would be visible at that time, and something that you can see with nothing more than very basic equipment. You don't need thousands of dollars worth of telescope to go out and see this. Even a pair of basic binoculars, you'll be able to see a lot of this stuff.
Okay, really? So like if I have the binoculars out, I can see a nebula, or is that too extreme?
Yeah, some nebulas, like the Orion Nebula, is one of the easiest to see for beginners, and it's very easy to find. It's in the Orion constellation, and many people can point out Orion's belt. There's 3 stars in a row. It's one of the brightest constellations in the winter sky and early spring. And so you can find the 3 stars of Orion's belt. Right next to it, there's a couple others, and that's his scabbard. If you look right in between the belt and the scabbard, there's a small little blue patch is what you'll start to see. And as your aperture gets larger, you'll start to be able to resolve more and more detail.
Okay, so when I'm looking into my binoculars and my telescope and I see a nebula, what am I actually looking at? Like, what is a nebula?
So oftentimes nebulas are stars that exploded, and it's the gas that is moving outward in all directions from that. Or maybe it's the original gas in the formation of where stars and planets are forming. And they can be hundreds and thousands of light years across. So they're very, very large areas, especially for us to be able to see them. There's some that are like the Cat's Eye Nebula is a very famous one that you'll see the Hubble pictures. And it's just stunning what you're looking at. And that is from a supernova that exploded that was documented by astronomers all around the world a couple thousand years ago. You had ancient Europeans, ancient Chinese, different cultures documented that they could see this explosion in the daytime, in the night sky, and it was so bright. And over thousands of years, we've been able to watch it grow.
Oh, okay.
So we can see that those gases and those materials expanding into space.
Damn, that's so interesting, and I'm glad that we have a human written record of that, because usually you don't get that. Locally, is there any cave paintings or petroglyphs that show that here in the
Not that I'm
Southwest?
aware of,
Okay.
of specific astronomical events. There are some things, I believe it's in New Mexico, that document what we believe is record of eclipses.
Okay.
And so that's pretty neat because a full solar eclipse is a pretty scary thing from an ancient perspective.
Why is it scary?
The whole sun's being blocked out. And so most of your ancient cultures saw that as kind of a harbinger of doom. And now we just know it's the moon going in front of the sun, or the earth going between the sun and the moon. And so depending on how those shadows are cast, many cultures saw that as either a bad omen or a good omen. Some cultures would go to war if there was an eclipse. But once astronomers were able to start predicting eclipses and understood the patterns they were looking at, it became much more of a thing to look forward to. And we've found records of these eclipses being documented in stone going back thousands and thousands of years. In the Americas especially, it was very prevalent. In Tenochtitlan, down in South America, there is a specific temple that is oriented perfect north, south, east, west. And the steps that go up the side, there's 90 steps. So the steps essentially account for 1/4 of the year. Everything's very geometrical and mathematical and calculated. And the pyramid isn't flat surfaced, it's steps. And as these steps go up, the staircase on the spring and fall equinox will illuminate perfectly down the steps to the head of a snake at the bottom.
Okay.
And it's essentially the feathered serpent from the Quetzalcoatl god and the historical references. And exactly on the equinoxes, it will illuminate as if the snake is gliding down the pyramid.
Whoa, okay.
So the amount of understanding that went into these astronomical phenomena by these ancient cultures is just astounding.
Oh, it's totally astounding that they had the ability to build those pyramids and then have it to the exact day and time, and the shadows for that one temple was really interesting. So using your ancient knowledge or what the ancients did with astronomy to compare to what you're doing today, how are you building off this rich tradition?
So what we've learned is that even with your smaller telescopes, we can start to use different filters. And as we know from modern science, different filters will absorb different radiation and different spectrums of light. And so you'll see pictures from like the Hubble Space Telescope where they're very colorful. And oftentimes what those were was they were taking in red and blues and greens, and then they stack those images together. And using that, they're able to tell not just the physical structure, but the chemical structure of nebulas and stars. And we can even begin to do that here with smaller telescopes. There are telescopes and private observatories here in Yavapai County that have recorded observations that were new, and NASA has taken them and written papers on them, just from local residents here in our county.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. And so before we get to what a dark sky community is, I was wondering for our viewers out there, is there a constellation out there that you can see in the winter months that is easy to identify, and how would you go about doing that?
So starting in the earlier winter, and then as we move forward, the Pleiades is one of the easiest to identify. The Pleiades is the seven sisters, and there are 7 main sequence stars that you can see very easily with the naked eye. From there, you'll be able to see the nebulosity and that gas and that formation of clouds very easy with a small telescope or binoculars. And then after that, you move into Orion. Orion is very easy to identify with the 3 stars of its belt, and it has a lot that you can look at. And then as we move later into the spring, Scorpius is a very easy one to identify. That'll begin to rise on the southeastern horizon, and you can see the hook of its tail. And so that's a very easy one to identify. Many of these stars are double stars. So kind of like in Star Wars, Tatooine, where there had multiple suns, that kind of thing really exists. And so there's a lot of these double stars that orbit each other. And if you have a strong enough telescope, you can zoom in from what you saw with your naked eye as 1 dot is actually 2. And you might see that one is yellow and one is blue. And so they're different temperatures. Maybe one's larger, one's smaller. Maybe one is older and one's younger. And so they're reaching different points in their life, and they're starting to expand and run out of fuel, or they're running hot, or whatever it may be.
Okay. So I guess my last question is do you believe in aliens, and do you think that we're going to see them, or at least discover them, sooner than later?
Very mathematical on this one. Good. If anybody's familiar with the Drake equation, the Drake equation was essentially just saying, how long has the universe been in existence? What was the probability of life to establish on Earth using what we have in Earth? And so just carbon-based life forms like us that breathe air and drink water. And then now as we've been studying exoplanets and learning about what the probability is of rocky planets in a habitable zone that have liquid water, that have oxygen-rich atmospheres, we start to multiply these things together to figure out a ratio. And over the billions and trillions of years of existence, there's a very high probability that aliens have existed, do exist, and will continue to exist in other places. However, now we're getting into the fact that we're able to destroy ourselves.
Pretty much.
Whether that's with a nuclear bomb or whatever technology we use on a daily basis, we have the ability to destroy ourselves in a single moment or over time. And so did alien civilizations do that? So now we have to add a new factor into that Drake equation, and it's how soon did they destroy themselves? And then you factor in what's the distance, are we able to communicate with them? So beyond time, just physical distances are extreme. Our closest star, Proxima Centauri, is about 3 light years away. And so we can send a signal 3 years there, 3 years back. Would they know to look for it? Would they be able to communicate back? And for us to actually send a probe there and physically meet them would take hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Oh, okay, so it's a long process that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I do like your statement about these civilizations, or we have the capabilities of destroying ourselves. So did they in the past do that? And I think that's where like that ancient aliens theories out there,
Yeah.
because when you look at that stuff, like especially with astronomy, it's really interesting and just makes you a little bit question like, how do they have all this knowledge of the stars with basic technology back then, who knows, with what we're dealing with now. So that's awesome. So growing up here in Prescott, you stargazed as a youth, but now you are involved with something called like a dark sky community. So what is a dark sky community, and what do you want to do with that?
So a dark sky community is a town, an area, it could be a county, or they even have dark sky preserves, such as the Grand Canyon is a dark sky preserve. And these are areas that have been certified as dark skies. And there's a international association that works with local municipalities and governments and governmental bodies to mandate the amount of light pollution where we have to cap it. And so when we go to California, you go to Los Angeles, there are some great observatories that were built in the last 100 years over in Los Angeles that can't do as much as they used to because there's so much light pollution in the Los Angeles basin and Southern California altogether. And so for areas like Northern Arizona, as we're developing, it's a way to develop intelligently and wisely to say, we don't want to create that. Oftentimes what that includes is maybe there's a new permitting process that instead of every light on the outside of a house being exposed, it can only face down. Just something as simple as that can really offset light pollution and allow the skies to remain relatively dark. When I was a kid, I was able to lay on my trampoline and watch every satellite going over. It's hard to do now, except for right at dusk when you're getting the most amount of solar reflection. And so for us, what we're trying to do is present that to the local municipalities. Many of them are already on board. There's cities and towns all across Northern Arizona that have already become registered as dark sky communities, and there's others who are not. So what we're attempting to do is make one of the largest dark sky areas in the world that we can say from the Grand Canyon to Black Canyon City. We've all agreed that we're going to be 80% dark sky and do the best that we can as we continue to grow and develop our communities to develop wisely.
Okay. So when you talk about light pollution, what are the side effects to light pollution than just being able to see the sky?
That's the gist of it.
Okay.
Not being able to see the stars. There are places where, like a National Geographic will love to present and show a picture of the same area of the sky taken in the middle of Africa versus in the middle of New York City. And you can't see anything when you're viewing it from New York City. But when you're in the middle of Africa, you might get the whole swath of the Milky Way, and you'll be able to see constellations and things that you never even knew existed here in the United States because we have such heavy populations and the light that comes with it.
Okay. So to get Prescott or the Quad City area, like, is it certified for a dark sky community? What would be the process that you would have to go through?
All of the local governments would have to kind of cooperate on a permitting process and decide how they're going to move forward in their allowances during construction. And it has been difficult because you have homeowners and maybe builders or whatever it is who want to have a custom light fixture on the outside of their house, or a large shopping center that wants to have an extremely lit parking lot. And so you just have to get everybody to work together to take down those lumens a little bit, or put on that outdoor sconce that faces down instead of out.
So that all sounds great with being a dark sky community and being a fellow like stargazer. I would love to see the stars a little bit more illuminated. So you talk about the environment, but I think a lot of people would want to know, is there any economic impact being a dark sky community?
The economic impact that I've seen and experienced can really only be positive. We here have a large retirement base of people who moved here because of our environment. They enjoy that they can move away from those big cities into an area where they can see the stars. And specifically with a lot of my friends that are in the astronomy club, that's why they moved here, so that they could use their telescopes. And so it was a benefit for them to move here and bring with them their money, their tax dollars, and all of those things that would benefit our community over time.
Yeah, that would be great. That's a huge benefit for the Quad City area.
Yeah, and regionally, even beyond the Quad Cities, we have Lowell Observatory is a huge part of northern Arizona's history. That's where they discovered Pluto by Clyde Tombaugh. And we have the Discovery Channel telescope. If you don't know about the Discovery Channel telescope, it's over in Happy Jack, and it's amazing. And the Discovery Channel financed a telescope, and they work with Lowell. There's the Naval Observatory, which does interferometry and triangulates with many telescopes using all of their data together to track space junk the size of a quarter. Something like this big flying across could put a hole in the space station. So we've got to track all of that. And the Naval Observatory is up on a mesa by Lake Mary, and they do that right there. So there's so many things here that people aren't even aware of, and they bring benefits to us. It helps grow our universities. Embry-Riddle, Northern Arizona University, Prescott College. These places can all work together for an economic benefit to this area with dark skies.
Right, and then we get the environmental benefit as well. So I like this, and I hope. What's your time frame, or where are you at with the process right now?
It can take a couple years to get certification. We're kind of in the ground roots effort of that, so we'll see where it goes. But Sedona is already a dark sky community, and many of the places on the east side of Mingus Mountain are. So we're working on the places on the west side of Mingus Mountain.
Okay, well, good luck with that, and I hope it turns out pretty well. So, Adam, it seems like you are a Renaissance man in a way, because we have you talking about telescopes, we have you talking about dark sky communities, but I don't know if our viewers know, but you also are involved with local theater. And we were talking earlier, so there's a new theater opening in Prescott Valley called Prescott Valley Performing Arts. And so I wanted to know a little bit of background about that, and what should we know? What should we expect for the PV Performing Arts?
So I graduated from Bradshaw Mountain High School, and I was in theater. And I'm not a good artist. I can't draw, but to graduate, you had to have arts credits. So I said, I'll try theater. And I really enjoyed it. I had no idea that at that same time, Prescott Valley Performing Arts was a thing in Prescott Valley. And our executive director, Clyde Neville, he had started the Prescott Valley Performing Arts about 20 years ago. And they've kind of been a homeless ragtag, gypsy theater, moving around to whatever school or church or stage would allow them to perform. Over the years, they've leased locations and had temporary smaller theaters in places. A couple years ago, we were essentially gifted a plot of land next to the Finlay Toyota Center in Prescott Valley. And we were able to begin building our forever home. Prescott has multiple theaters. The Elks Theater is one that everybody knows. Prescott Fine Arts. And there's these organizations in Prescott, but now Prescott Valley's population has exceeded Prescott. And Prescott Valley has nothing of the such. And so we've been working very diligently to build this theater out there. My son was a freshman, and he was coaxed into trying out for a play. He found he really enjoyed it. Okay. And so as they began construction, I volunteered that I had grown up the son of a local contractor and knew how to build a wall and swing a truss and a hammer. And I volunteered, and next thing you know, I'm the treasurer of the board.
Wow. So I think for viewers at home, this is very important. You may have to get a credit in high school, and it could lead to a lifelong passion, like Adam. So it's been a couple years, right?
Yes.
So where are you at now with the building and finalizing that?
So we're about 95% complete with the theater, and we're working on the last few things. The stage itself is a very detailed process to build. When you have a bunch of actors on a stage, you have to make sure it's load bearing. So essentially we have to build the stage as if it was the second floor of a building.
Whoa, okay.
It has to be very strong and very well engineered. And so we've got a couple more heavy costs that we are working on, but 95% of the building is complete. And we would love to give you a tour, stop by and see us. It's the Main Street Theater right next to the Finlay Toyota Center. And if you can volunteer your time, your efforts, your money, whatever it may be, we really appreciate it to get us over the line. We're hoping to be open within about 90 days.
Okay, cool. So 3 months. And, I'll offer this right now. If you want us to come and do like a mini tour on another webcast episode, I'm more than welcome.
We would
happy
love that.
to do that. Well, Adam, thank you very much for being our guest here on the webcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I really enjoyed geeking out with you for a little bit with astronomy, the universe, even talking a little bit about ancient cultures, and then learning about dark sky communities. I'm hoping Quad City area that we are dark sky community, because I would love to see some nebulas and hopefully the rings of Saturn. I've only seen Jupiter, so I haven't been able to
We'll go out
see.
with my telescope and look at the rings of Saturn.
All right, awesome. We'll have information in the description below for Prescott Valley Performing Arts and a link to Adam's column, The Backyard Astronomer. With that said, this is Robert Zinni from another Five Senses webcast. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and don't forget to check us out at 5enses.mag.com.